Today, as part of the ShoutOut online interview series, we're going to interview Cathal Kerrigan. Cathal has been involved in the gay rights movement since it began, and he helped found the Cork Gay Collective and Gay Health Action. He's a wealth of knowledge on the early gay rights movement, and we're so lucky to have him here today. Cathal, how were you involved in the early gay rights movement?
Well, I was born in Cork in 1955, and in 1974, when I was 19, I had a real crisis. I was sort of withdrawn, did a bad leaving cert, and felt very depressed about the idea of being gay. And what happened, I was very lucky. At the same time in Dublin, David Norris and Sean Connolly and Clem Clancy, etc., they founded the Irish gay rights movement. I didn't know about this. I hadn't made any contact with anybody who was gay. I was totally isolated. I didn't know about sort of that there might be pubs where gay people met. I didn't even know about the idea of meeting for sex in toilets, public toilets, which was the way that people met then. So I was very lucky. There was a new newspaper starting called the Sunday World, and it wanted to do expose on sex in Ireland. It did a piece about these poor people, these homosexuals, and the gay rights movement wrote in and said, hey, we actually exist as an organization, and here's our address. It was a postbox number. So I wrote off to them, and then they made contact. And then I went to Dublin to meet with them. They were holding cheese and wines. And that's how I began. And then they gave me contacts in Cork. They were like in Le Chateau pub at that stage. It was not a gay bar at all, but gay people met in there sort of quietly. Some gay people met in there. And that's how I met up with them. And that's how it began in 1974.
So after Cathal, you made contact with the Dublin movement. How then did you get involved back in your home city?
Well, I was, as I say, 20-year-old, 21-year-old. I started reading stuff. The Gay News was a newspaper published in London, and I started getting a subscription to that. And I started reading books like Dennis Altman's Homosexual Oppression and Liberation, which came out around that time. And I managed to order that. I saw that in a review journal that my father got. And as a result, I became very active with the idea we needed to organize. So the Dublin people said, listen, hey, we've got about 30 odd people or more in the whole of Munster. They called a meeting in the Imperial Hotel on a Sunday. And about 25, 30 of us turned up. And there we decided we would found a Cork Branch. And that's how it began, with those 25 people in the Imperial Hotel in 1975.
And what was it like to be involved back then? You speak about, the Gardaí would come in and, they would see what you were at, but you're not worried that this could lead to, an investigation, because it was still illegal to be gay at that point.
What happened was that we realized that, in fact, being gay was not illegal. What was illegal was two men or more having sex. So it was the sexual act that was illegal. And we were not criminals, and we refused. We said, hold on a second, we're not criminals. This is, the general perception is, oh, gay men are criminals and they're all illegal. We said, no, we're not. But so we started standing up for ourselves and realizing, hey, why are we scurrying around afraid? Because we're not doing anything that's illegal. It's okay, we could be if they actually found us having sex with each other. And that was the problem with men. Where were gay men going to have sex? Because, as I said, they couldn't have it in the club. And the thing is that where gay men then went is many gay men back then, this is a different time as well, didn't have apartments of their own. You didn't leave your family until you got married, or if you moved away from town for a job, and then you'd get an apartment, etc. So many gay men found themselves looking for a place to have sex. And the place they ended up doing was public parks, because the Gardaí did actually arrest people. And David Norris very successfully ran a campaign to get people to fight back, because before it was the shame and the stigma and the idea of being stigmatized in your community and losing your job, etc., that made people afraid. So David Norris said, hey, legally, we'll represent you. And people started fighting back in the courts. And then they started getting off these. He showed up the law. So we had it was fearful. People were afraid. And yes, some people were scurried. People used to come in with their faces hidden into the club. And then when they were going out the door again, they'd put a scarf over their face, etc., as if they were leaving something totally clandestine. Because Cork is a small place, 130,000 people began to know of this queer club, this place that existed. So people were worried about being seen going in and out.
Tell us more about Gay Health Action, because you were very involved in that during the AIDS crisis.
There was huge negativity. So it's hard for people to believe now, but a famous rock star called Rock Hudson died in America of AIDS in 1984. And the British tabloids had it disgusting stuff like, this man gave his lovers AIDS. This man gave the waitress who served him a glass of lemonade, AIDS, etc. It was really incredibly ignorant, vicious stuff. And we said, something like that will start to happen in Ireland. So we set up Gay Health Action. We found that we got lots of opposition from the establishment, from the government, from the Department of Justice, from the Department of Health. We didn't get help, but we managed to fundraise independently, and we got support from the entertainment industry. We got support from the media and RTE, etc. Were very good. And what happened in 1986 was that Vincent Hanley, Fab Vinny, who was sort of like the Rock Hudson of Ireland, if you wish. He was a famous DJ, and he died of AIDS, and that was public. So he was like our Rock Hudson, and that made AIDS a major issue in Ireland. And we were the only organisation. And so people turned to us. So we ended up not just helping the gay men, but actually giving information as well to inner city concerned parents against drugs, because there was a huge IV drug, intravenous drug, heroin issue in the centre of Dublin. And that was a major site for HIV transmission and AIDS in the 1980s. So we were giving them information. We produced tens of thousands of leaflets. And we also did the first survey of gay men's sexual habits. We actually did a survey on what do you do and how do you do it, etc. And I think it was the first sexual survey of sexual habits of anything, of anybody in Ireland, heterosexual or homosexual. And so we did that over the years. And after 5 years, we had, in the meantime, we're finding that we still were stonewalled by the establishment. So we broadened out and we helped establish other organizations like Corda, which was a buddies group to help him, and second, to help people with practical things like getting messages, or when they were in hospital, calling to them. And then we founded as well Dublin AIDS Alliance, which today is HIV Ireland. And that was because it didn't say gay, it was broader. We got the haemophiliacs involved who were also concerned. We got the inner city communities, we had ourselves, we had women's groups, and so it was a broader organization. And as I say, it went on to get money and to establish.
And then just on Gay Health Action, so when you were involved, obviously, it must have been very emotionally taxing. Friends of yours passed away, you saw people. How did you keep going and keep getting involved? It must have felt very disheartening, especially when there was no support from any health agencies or the establishment, as you say.
It was, and it was very depressing for, I remember the first leaflet we did, we said we must give people the facts, but we don't want to scare them. So the first leaflet we said, 1 in 10 of people who get HIV will get AIDS, and 1 in 10 of those people who get full-blown AIDS will go on to die. By the time of 1987, when we were doing our 4th leaflet, we were saying everybody who gets HIV will develop AIDS eventually, and all of them will die. And it was very depressing. There was no cure, there was no test. Now, then a test came out in 1987, and then it was actually in the early 90s that the retroviral drugs treatment came out, which transformed everything. So it was it was very much a struggle. We were a small group of about, half a dozen to a dozen people. We socialized together. We were connected together, like 4 of us were two couples for a time, so there was, we sort of socialized together to support each other. We knew each other beforehand from the Gay Collective, from doing stuff. And we were also, when we were mainly involved in Gay Health Action, we were also involved in other social life.
You and Kathleen can know each other as friends, and you can be perfectly, and I'd be perfectly happy to know you and shake hands with you and say you're all right, though you're a little bit strange. That is what is being said. In other words, don't you think that there is no, that's what you're doing. You're trivializing my sexuality. Because as a gay man, I have the right, every right, as much as anybody else, to happiness and the fundamental right to love and affection and a love to emotion.
Just on all your work from those years, what future did you envisage for the LGBT community in Ireland today? When you were involved in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, did you think we'd get where we are today, or did you think, no, it was never going to be possible?
My vision was not of what we have today, which is brilliant. I envisioned the idea that we would fight for and we would get our legal rights. but I never saw myself being popular. I thought I'll be a minority, but I'll be able to say to people, listen, I don't care what you think about me or what you say about me behind my back or at home, just so long as you can't refuse me in the hotel when I want a double bed with my partner, or when you can't refuse me service at the pub because I'm kissing somebody in the pub. So that's what I saw. This world, I found it transform. In 1990, we defunded Gay Health Action because we were exhausted and burnt out. And as I say, HIV Ireland took on the campaign. But in 1992, I actually went abroad to Amsterdam and lived there for 7 years. And I was burnt out and recovered. And when I came back in 2000, I went in 2003 got a job in UCC, and I went back to where I had been originally in UCC library. And when I went there, I would discover that the Gay Society had been established, had been recognized in 1987. It was that year in 2003, it was as the most popular, best student society. So there was this huge change of transformation. I discovered that the auditor and the secretary were members of Young Fine Gael. I was just amazed.
You know, as you say, you're very surprised at where things are today. But what challenge do you think the LGBTQIA community still face in Ireland?
Well, one of the things that concerns me an awful lot is talking about Gay Health Action and HIV/AIDS, is that, as I understand it, Ireland is the only country in Europe where among young gay men, HIV is going up instead of down. And when you talk about Gay Health Action and AIDS, we could never have seen it then. But today we have the opportunity to actually eliminate HIV and AIDS completely, because with U equals U, and people can look that up if they don't know what it is, but U equals U, with the treatment we have today, with PrEP, PEP, etc. If we put these in force, young gay men can live in a world again without AIDS and without the fear of HIV. That would be my big dream, and my big ask of young gay men is get with it, get out there, don't miss this opportunity.
Well, you've raised some really interesting points there, Cathal, and thank you so much for all the work you did over the years and that you continue to do, and it's much appreciated.
It's a pleasure, Donald, and as I say, thank you to your generation for all the achievements you've done, and it's only the beginning. I look forward to seeing a lot more achievements from your generation in the decades to come, which hopefully I'll be around for.
Thank you, Cathal.